Hi, everyone. So I have a friend who went out to raise some money last year, and he spoke to 892 investors, and 15 of them said yes. And to me, that's grit, hearing no 877 times and keeping going until you hear those yeses at the end. And I want to tell my own story of my entrepreneurial journey. When I was 25, I was a hotshot software developer, and I started working for other companies and building custom projects, and I ended up doing some pretty cool stuff for big companies. I built a presentation that traveled with the Olympic torch for IBM. I built something cool for Pfizer that sat in the front windows of their headquarters, and that eventually led me to getting hired by the Discovery Channel to build a sales presentation tool for them. They wanted something that looked like television but was editable like PowerPoint. So presentations are part of my core. And so we built this thing and handed it to them, and the first thing that happened was the person who had hired us got promoted, and I was like, that's a thing. We should make this into a product. So I brought in a co-founder who was a really good designer, and I just remember this moment, we're pitching the next big company, and we're in the parking lot cutting our business cards out of this page that we've printed on our printer. But we went in, and we didn't get that business, but we got a bunch of other big name companies, and all of a sudden this was working. We had customers, and we were hiring people, and we had a room full of people, and we had all these fun projects we were working on. The presentations looked great because we were working with all these media companies, and I was the technical co-founder of a non-funded company, and it was great until the economy crashed. I have gray hair, so the dot-com crash hit, and all of these amazing customers stopped paying us, and we couldn't sign anyone new. And we didn't really have any buffer, and there was just a day where we ran out of money, and I remember my co-founder and I divvied up a list of all those wonderful people in the room, and we each had to fire half of them, which was terrible. It's still like the worst day of my professional life. And we had crashed the vehicle. And as part of that, my co-founder left. We were in debt, so the company had debt. I borrowed some money from family, and I decided to keep going. I really thought about it, and I was like, I think the tech's pretty good, I guess because I built it, so I was biased. The customers were good, and I figured things would come back eventually. And it took a long time, but as part of that, I realized that I needed to expand. I needed to pivot and be more than just a tech person. I had to learn how to run the business. I had to know the numbers. I had to know how to manage people. So I reinvented myself. As part of rebuilding the company, I rebuilt myself to be that person. And I just remember this moment where I had been pitching HBO for months, and they finally said yes. And I was the sales guy, the tech support guy, the software development guy, the guy who went in and trained them on the system. But they said yes, and I just remember going like this in this empty office because there was no one else there. And it started working. It came back, and I brought in another co-founder who was a better software developer than me, and we launched a new version of this company that ran in a web browser. And we went and raised some venture capital, and I was the finance guy. I was building the financial models and talking about the numbers with the investors and running the budget, and it worked. So we got acquired, and I joke that my overnight success took 15 years, but it was like this crazy tortured path, right? But I just had to keep going and reinventing and growing and evolving. And that's eventually what worked. And that's what I see with the entrepreneurs I work with now, right? Everyone's looking for these quick hits. So I read this book recently by Adam Grant called Hidden Potential. And one of the things he talks about, he found a study of, they did with hundreds of West African entrepreneurs. And they divided them into 3 groups. First group got no training, so they were the control group. The second group got a mini MBA course for a week, so business skills. And the third group got mindset training, so no business skills, but just grit, basically. How to persevere, how to pivot, how to find resources. And they checked back in a year, and the mindset group was far ahead of everyone else. Now, personally, I wish they had done a 4th group, which was the mindset and the business skills, because that's really where I see the magic happen. So I love the story of Netflix, because I think it illustrates this. They were world champions at mailing DVDs. But already, as they were beating Blockbuster, they saw the end of that and started experimenting with streaming. Blockbuster didn't see the future and went out of business. Netflix then became world champions of streaming, but even then realized they were at the mercy of other people's content, so evolved again into becoming world champions of their own content, right? And that's what happens when you have skills and the grit, the mindset. And we forget, right, these companies that look so amazing now, like the first product is wonky. So with Apple Computer, for example, we all have these amazing phones, right? The first product was just a circuit board. You had to provide your own keyboard, your own case, your own TV, right? And the entrepreneurial journey is using what we have right now to get more resources, right? And then using those resources to get more resources. And that's the grit piece. And just to let everyone off the hook, these are all famous people. They all have imposter syndrome. So Daniel Ek says it out loud. He's the CEO of Spotify. Sarah Blakely, billionaire, says she's still afraid of public speaking. Mark Zuckerberg famously had to call other CEOs and asked if he could come shadow them at their jobs so he could learn how to run a company, right? And in my story, this is a moment where I didn't have the grit. A couple years ago, I decided to start a new company to solve traffic, which is a passion of mine, and went out and started pitching people, and I heard no 7 times and gave up, right? So that's what happens when entrepreneurs don't have grit. One more story, a buddy of mine writes short stories and wants to get published in literary magazines, but his stories don't quite fit the literary magazine vibe. So he went to a 2-day conference, talked to every literary magazine there. They all said no. And finally, at the end of the second day, he found one person who was willing to work with him, right? And that, to me, is the grit, right? It's starting, it's having a wonky product, something that doesn't quite fit, and just going, right? And not taking no for an answer. And I've seen the difference in my own life when I do that and when I don't. So good luck, everyone.